Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Got a little smaller turnout today. Mr. Andres present. Ms. Coulter's here. Now your name.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
That's an easy one.
I know it.
Think of the Matrix.
Mr. Gelling's here, Mr. Hoffman's here. We also,
I've done it before.
we have Mr. Jeremy Smith, our planning, zoning administrator. Director. I was going to say extraordinaire, and Mr.
Wait.
That's just small print for me to read. And Mr. Amat from Giffords Webster. So we have an opportunity for public comment. All those persons that are here. Well, there wasn't last month, so we'll open up the public hearing and see if anyone has anything to say. No? No one wishes to speak. We'll close the public hearing, bring it back up to the Planning Commission for approval of minutes, January 9th, 2025.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, although I was not here for the meeting, I did request a link to the meeting and watched it. Riveting, great job by all, but the minutes are correct in the data. One spelling issue that we'll clear up, but I would move to recommend approval of the meetings.
I concur and I would support.
Motion by Mr. Hoffman to approve the minutes with the spelling correction, support by Mr. Anderson. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. Approval of this evening's agenda, any changes?
None.
All right, anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented.
Motion by Mr. Anderson, support by Mr. Andre. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Any correspondence?
None.
I don't believe we have any old business.
None.
Brings us to new business, text amendment discussion. Directional sign.
Yeah, good evening, Planning Commission. We provided the memo and the potential text. It was pretty short, but hopefully sweet on the additional signs. I hope it kind of captures your discussion you had. Generally, you expressed the 4 square foot area and 3 feet height maximums. But then we also, wanted to cap the additional signs at a certain number per lot area. We wanted to keep them out of the front setback unless it's at a dedicated one-way vehicular entrance. We wanted to restrict it from being illuminated nor containing electronic messages. And a sign permit would be required for it so that Jeremy and staff can, ensure it meets this ordinance.
Looks like you came back and kind of told us to pull back a little bit on what we could do and what we couldn't do as well.
Yeah, I think that, while, this was an issue for me, for site plans, I think the discussion that we had at the last meeting and the information that Andy and I discussed after the meeting, I think this will suffice in controlling said signs, so that way there isn't an overabundance while still giving the property owner the ability to have directional signs that are necessary.
Have you looked at, I know we got a limitation here of like 1 per 10,000 square foot of site, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's our smaller size? I'm thinking of Rite Aid's got like 2 acres. So even with that, you're gonna get 8 or 9 potentially, right?
Potentially, I mean, most people aren't gonna, have that. I can't see that getting out of hand too much. We were more concerned about the location and the size and square footage more so than the number, especially if it was within the site. Yeah, I think that was kind of the consensus for our discussion and.
I think so
you and
too. I
I's
think
discussion.
our biggest point was making sure, I guess our number one priority was just making sure they're not in the front setback unless they're at that vehicular one-way entrance or exit. I think, your typical commercial properties are probably going to your typical non-big box commercial properties are probably going to range from about half an acre to about 2 acres max. So you'd probably be looking at, maybe anywhere between 2 and 8 signs.
You can't go crazy, but if you have a need, say you got a half acre
Yep.
size, that, what do they do? They have to go to the.
Yeah, to go to a ZBA if they wanted to request more, and that would be, again, they'd have to prove substantial justice or practical difficulty for that. So that would be the mechanism for that, yes.
Anyone else have comments, questions? Or?
I have a question. I just wanted to clarify that if you're proposing that we adopt this 5.19.3 section, and then would we also be eliminated, because there's a subsection D that talks about the signs not requiring a permit, including traffic control signs. So are you also planning on deleting that then?
No, that would stay.
So they can have unlimited traffic control signs?
Yeah, if the engineer and Jeremy review it as like a literal stop sign or something within the
Right.
site, those can be unlimited.
Okay.
Do you think we need to clarify?
Anyone else?
We'll just leave it in there.
I don't think, yeah, I think, yeah, we'll leave it in there. I don't think we need additional clarity there. I think it's pretty understood.
Okay.
So just stay at this level? Or?
So this tonight is just discussion. If you want, we need to make a motion to move this to a public hearing at the next meeting. And then at that meeting, if it's approved, it'll be recommended to the township board for final approval.
Okay.
Just keep an eye on us. That's good. Mr. Hoffman?
I'd like to make a motion to set a public hearing for the text amendment, I'm going to see for additional signs for next meeting.
April?
It'll be March 6th.
Anyone agree with that?
I'll second. Support.
Motion by Mr. Hoffman to schedule the public hearing for the additional signs, supported by Mr. Andre. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Anything else?
Yeah, so in front of you, you have the zoning ordinance update tracking grid showing what we've done, what we've looked at. After this, I would ask if there's anything that anybody has that would be, anything that doesn't have the
Yeah.
third page, anything that doesn't have any dates.
And just to summarize, the edits to this chart, there's 4 rows that have bold text in them. Those are kind of what you had at the last meeting determined to perhaps be pending priority items. One was Commissioner Bush mentioned the electric vehicle charging, maybe perhaps how those turn into stations, I think was his concern, so that was one of them. Jeremy brought up maybe consolidating PO and OS, that was one we bolded. Village mixed use, that was one that everybody kind of agreed as figuring out what we do with that district. And then the parking standards, it sounds like you had an interest in allowing land banking for perhaps all uses.
Yeah.
Already on the parking, we've already changed the size of the parking.
We did that for warehouse. We only did it for a few uses. We didn't do it for all. We didn't do it across the board. It was-
Yeah, you shrunk the.
was the warehouse
Yeah, you
and the
shrunk
I-
the requirements for manufacturing and warehousing.
When I say size, I mean
Size.
the-
Mention-
Oh, I'm
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
you
Yeah, we
did that too.
expanded, yeah. So instead of, the original standard was 9 by 18, now they're 10 by 20.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll take a while to work itself in.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard because it's not until we get new, if it's a minor, addition or an admin review that I've looked at, it's hard for me to have them redo the whole parking lot, and they've only got like 6 parking spaces. They're gonna probably lose 1, maybe 2, depending on how the layout of the site is. So we're working on it. It's gonna be a slow process, but it is what it is, and at least going forward, we know that the larger vehicles will have better parking down the road.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. It's more of a stop the bleeding at this point.
Agreed, agreed. One thing too that, I believe I talked with Jill about this a few weeks ago or so. And I just mentioned it to, Mr. Amont here. Looking at where we allow farming in the township. Currently stating is that all of the residential RE through R3, farming is a permitted use. R4, it was removed a few years ago. If you look at the standards for farming, it's not saying we don't want farming, we just want farming on larger parcels. R3, I believe you have to be a, so R1, you have to be a minimum of a half acre. R2 is 1,500 square feet. R3 is 1,200 square feet. And R4 is 9,000 square feet. So R4 does not have permitted use, principal permitted use of a farm. And when I first started, I had made notes in my book that we were looking at removing farming as a permitted use, maybe as a special land use. We could flip that over to, or let the Right to Farm Act, or I don't know if everybody's familiar with the GAMPS guidelines, the generally accepted practices that the state of Michigan uses. They have a lot of guidelines on where you cannot have a farming operation. So something to consider, not anything that's pressing. We don't want to, not trying to freak anybody out, but just something that I'd made notes on. I'm going through all my sticky notes in my book to see where I thought things could be changed. If it's not something we want to look at, that's fine. It was just something, point of interest that I thought might be looked at.
Mr. Hoffman just mentioned to me, what's the difference between gardening and farming?
Farming is a commercial use. Gardening is because we have a provision in the book for roadside stands as well. So we've already discussed all that about 6-8 months ago, I think it was, maybe a better part of a year now. So that's all taken care of. But commercial farming, you would sell things, you would have larger farms and things of that sort that shouldn't be in a subdivision type setting.
But if you're on a 1,200 square foot lot,
Correct, but the way it was explained to me was that because it's a principal permitted use, you may have an issue with, in the back of the book, giving the use for farming. It says minimally you have to have 10 acres. There's some confusion I think we need to clear up on that, so that's part of the issue that I have with that, is that I want to make sure that that gets cleared up and is very black and white, so there's no confusion going forward.
I'm sure,
Mr. Hoffman?
so as a premise right now, a roadside stand, are we considering that that's come from farming or from gardening?
Typically, that would be from gardening, because that's not you can grow tomatoes and sell them in front of your house. You can have wood piles and sell wood in the front of your house. Commercial farming operations would be selling of cows, selling of chickens. It gets a little gray when you get into eggs, things of that sort, because you should have 10 acres to have farming livestock.
Okay.
Again,
So it's not whether I'm selling something or not is the difference between gardening and farming. It's what I'm selling.
I think,
I mean, I could
That's a
plant
very good question.
10 rows of corn, you
We
know,
have an audience member, that maybe we can have.
and then
clarify.
sell that. So it sounds like it's not that I'm selling it, it's what I'm selling it is what the definition between farming and gardening.
And maybe how you're selling it too.
roadside stand.
Are
is
you
your- is
distributing it to a?
Typically temporary.
Yeah.
It's not a full-time, full-blown.
Very good.
Again, that's part of the confusion too, I think, that we
Yeah.
may have that we need to clear up as well. So definitions and things of that sort, I'll consult with Mr. Yancho and we'll get a better understanding, and Andy. and
Jill
I-
as well,
and Jill,
because it's
we'll all get it figured out. Like I said, this isn't a pressing thing. I just want to make sure there's no confusion going forward, so. So whether it gets flipped from permitted to special, or we remove it all together and then use the section in the back of the book, just
And how we may define the terms and
how and what
Amends.
you can sell.
the definitions even.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
is there,
I want to do one more.
Go ahead.
Because technically, you could have a roadside stand and not be farming or gardening on that property. You could be doing it someplace else and then saying,
I think in the provision in the book that it says you have to do it on your
you
property.
have to produce what you sell for a
Yes.
roadside stand.
Correct.
All right, that's good.
I believe that's in there.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, we made sure that was in there or it was already in there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that's in there now, if it wasn't before.
I'm glad to hear that, because after you brought that point up, I do remember when I was younger, a place down Perry Road, Shoemaker Farm, sold delicious sweet corn. They also leased property and grew acres and acres of it. But the stand was way back off the road, parking was adequate, wasn't a big deal, but.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to, all roadside stands say that all produce or products for sale are grown on the premises or are made from produce grown on the premises.
Thrown on the premise. Yep. Okay. That's a good question, good catch, Mr. Hoffman.
Is there anything that the board is looking to, on this list, that they want to kind of kick off and look at next? Open to ideas?
Especially those four kind of bolded areas that we had discussed last month.
I mean, if the board's okay with it, we'll start with those four, and then we can go from there.
And add the farming, obviously.
Add
as a
farming to it
fifth,
as a fifth one, yeah. Just so we have the next couple months kind of laid out of what we're gonna be discussing, trying to, especially on these, well, March may not be a slow month, because I've got a bunch of things already on my plate, that we'll see in March, but, after that, we might see, some more slow meetings like we're having today, where we can discuss 3 or 4 things in one meeting and kind of get this going and knock a lot of this stuff out, hopefully before the end of this calendar year, or as much as we can.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sweet, so yeah, we'll just get together,
Yeah,
you and I.
perfect.
We'll
Next on our agenda is committee report.
Our crossover members, neither one of them are here today, but we haven't had a ZBA since November. Haven't had an SPR in a couple months. And Township Board at the meeting last night, or Tuesday night, they elected a new trustee. Damon Brown, I believe is his name. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what his name was. Works for Merrill Lynch here in town, so financial advisor. So now we have a full township board. So my next priority is getting with Supervisor Bennett and filling our vacant seats, since now Mr. Yancho is now on the township board and not with our planning commission. So hopefully I believe they had 16 candidates, if I remember right. More than that. So hopefully a few of those we can trickle down into. We need another alternate for ZBA, I believe, and we have the
16 candidates for the planning commission?
for the open trustee spot.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We're hoping a few of those with Supervisor Bennett's recommendation could be appointed to Mr. Yancho's vacant seat. Yep.
Well, actually, yeah, okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're right.
What about our attorney?
So the township attorney, his name is Anthony Chubb. He started beginning of January. He's out of Metro Detroit somewhere, I believe Troy. Lives in Flint, works in Troy. Haven't met him yet. I've talked to him on the phone a couple times, but I believe he's supposed to be at the next township board meeting. And he's the general counsel, but then they've also retained Bill Delzer, who was working with Attorney Laddie to do the local cases. So assessing Michigan Tax Tribunal cases, the police cases in court, and then my code enforcement, once it gets to court, he's going to take over those cases with Chubb's kind of direction and how we want to have the cases go. So
Any other committee reports going on? Nothing. No, it's been pretty slow. Yeah, from a site plan standpoint, we haven't seen anything the last couple months.
Nope, but planning commission next month will be full. Maybe 3 or 4 things on next month's planning. No SPR probably. I say that with a little grain of salt, but we may see something at SPR, but majority of it, from my understanding, everything needs a public hearing. So we have just to give you a heads up, we have a modification to a PUD, we have a modification to an ROS, this text amendment, and then we may have a rezoning as well, so full slate for next month.
Okay, good.
So if I may, I'm going to quickly say, members, Jeremy, it's been a pleasure to serve with you guys, but I think I'm going to step down from the Planning Commission.
Okay?
Already 2 seats to fill. I've spent my entire life in Grand Lake Township. It's been a great place to live. I grew up here, a little kid playing in the streets, much different back then. I think I served the community well over the past 16 years. This month is my 4th year here. Actually, just wrapping up my 4th year on this commission right here. Most of them I served 8 years consecutively on the Township Board of Trustees, 8 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think I did about 3 years on Parks and Rec, 4 years on the Police Committee, 5 years on what was once the Joint Fire Commission between the city and the township. I wanted to serve back to the community, and I think it's time for me to move on.
Okay,
This will be my last meeting.
okay. Appreciate it.
I truly have enjoyed working with all of you.
Well, we've appreciated your insight as well.
Thank you.
The experiences that you've brought.
Yep.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard you're getting evicted from your house. No.
Who told you that?
Mr. Chairman,
Too many zoning violations.
Yes.
Right.
have you mentioned this to Supervisor Bennett yet?
No.
Okay. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to tell him to contact you?
You can tell them.
Okay, got it.
Okay, brings us to other business, and there was a request to move April meeting date?
Yes, if we could. I unfortunately won't be here on the April 3rd meeting, so I'm requesting that we move it to the following week on April 10th, if possible.
Do you have any issues with
No
that?
objection.
No, no.
Mr. Hoffman, you have any problems with your work?
Not yet. I have to get it approved by my spouse.
I understand. I figure I give you enough time this
Right.
time instead of a month before, and at least we got a couple months now.
Right.
Do you need anything from us? Do you need-
Just a motion to move the date.
And that would be moving the date from April 3rd to April 10th?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson, do you want to take the final motion on
My
this?
final motion.
Yes,
being
there you go.
that moving
There you go.
the Next meeting to April 10th, 2025.
Nope, it's not the next meeting.
No, it's,
We got March still.
it's the April meeting, I'm sorry, April meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, the April meeting to April
Is
10th.
there support for that?
I'll support.
Mr. Andre supports that. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Anything else?
Making a motion to adjourn our planning commission meeting at 7:27 PM.
Motion by Mr. Anderson to adjourn at 7:27, support by Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we are adjourned.
Thank you.